Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of Chip Talks podcast. So today we have Coach Bri on with us, and we're going to talk about the endocannabinoid system. So welcome, Coach Bri. We're glad that you're here today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. And so Bri is a health coach, and Bri works with women, mainly women, right, to on
Right.
their personal fitness and health. And so she has a downstream that is interested in the endocannabinoid system. So we're going to have a little bit of a conversation about the endocannabinoid system today. But I think it's super interesting where you're physically located right now. So do you want to just tell us a little bit about where you're physically located, and then I'll throw it to you, and you can start questioning me. So she's gonna question and answer me, but we'll throw it to her. But tell us a little bit about where you are right now and what you do and what your sculpting business is and your body image business is.
Yes. Well, I'm really grateful for the power of the internet because it allows us to all be connected. Even though I'm currently in South Korea, my husband has recently joined the Army, and so he's here, and so I'm streaming in from Asia, all the way into Oklahoma, and it's awesome because I still get to be connected with the locals in Oklahoma, and I actually get to have the connection of my fitness positivity community worldwide, which is really encouraging. I am a virtual personal fitness and a natural health coach. I run the Virtual Sculpt Fitness Academy, which is designed to help busy professional women to master the foundations of their natural health, their fitness, their bodies, and ultimately their lives, allowing them to experience fitness in a way that isn't extreme or holding them back in any way, but empowers them to have what I like to call hashtag fitness freedom, meaning that you don't feel over restricted with your foods or feel like you have to work out 3 hours in the gym in order to achieve your body transformation goals. So we're all about empowering women from the foundational level. I work with Dr. Carmen Jones, a naturopathic doctor. And so all of the natural health that I coach, reducing inflammation in the body, balancing women's hormones, things like that, it's all under her. And yeah, we're really just grateful to serve women in this way.
That is so cool. So cool. And I'm excited to have you on, and I'm excited to kind of have you question me. So
Yeah.
yeah. And so it's really neat to have you, and I'm very excited for what you're doing. And I really like your whole philosophy on, little changes, right? So you can make giant changes one bite at a time. And that's kind of the way that you coach people, which is really, really cool. Okay, well, I'll kind of throw it to you and let you quiz me, so to speak. So this should be kind of fun.
Yes. I'm really excited to have this talk all about the master regulatory system and the endocannabinoid system because I have so many questions for you. But before we get started, Chip, there's something I wanted to share with you is, I don't know if you remember when we first met, I was writing an article on your business and you and how you serve the community for the natural fitness column for the Beta newspaper. And in that piece, I remember you sharing how you're Chip Paul of Paul's Valley. So your family discovered Paul's Valley. And I was actually talking to my grandpa a few months ago, and he was telling me how our family farm actually got started in Paul's Valley. So it's expanded out from now, but I just thought like, wow, what a small world that both of our families got started in the same
That's fascinating. Are you a Chickasaw? Do you have Chickasaw? Are you native in your
no.
ancestry? That's interesting. So the Chickasaws got land grants. And so, a lot of the Indians believe that you don't own land. So it was only because when we became westernized, we got land grants. And so those land grants were all around, Paul's Valley. But there's so your family likely bought land from a Chickasaw, so it
Yeah.
was,
Uh-huh.
yeah,
And that's how they
that's
got
really
started. We've
cool.
been in farming a long time. But anywho, I thought, what a small world. So
That's
small.
really cool. Yeah, no, and
Yeah.
that's a neat story. So that's cool. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay, let's dive into a few questions I have for you. Starting with, what exactly is the Master Regulatory System, abbreviated as MRS, and why is this important for our health?
Yeah, so that's a kind of a giant question, because the endocannabinoid system, which we'll refer to from now on as the master regulatory system, just because it's everybody gets it confused with marijuana, right? So if we talk about it as endocannabinoid, everybody thinks we're talking about marijuana. It's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a system that your dog has, your bird has, your fish has. So real quick, kind of three major points about the endocannabinoid system that let you know how, or the master regulatory system that let you know how important it is it's super old. Okay. So we formed this system when we developed a spine. And so we literally formed this system in something called a sea squirt, which is a little spongy like thing. And this spongy like thing in the larva stage, it had a little bug kind of deal that would have, it had a tail. So it would swim to the next rock and kind of latch onto the next rock. But the larva stage of a sea squirt had an endocannabinoid system. So basically, you can go back to everything that has a spine has an endocannabinoid system. So that kind of indicates its supreme importance in not just us, but in all life. The second thing is it's kind of looking to be our master regulatory system. And again, that's why we're calling it the master regulatory system. But what does that mean? Well, it means it sits and function above your central nervous system, above, any major system that you can think of in your body. This system regulates it. So it turns out we work kind of like a car, right? So we understand that in our car, we have a computer. And that computer is always looking at all the systems in the car, and it's trying to balance us to, perfect gas mileage, perfect exhaust, perfect, oil usage and, radio tuning and everything, right? So it's always trying to balance everything in that car to perfect homeostasis, perfect balance, perfect function. What turns out, we're very much the same. Hypothalamus hippocampus is the computer in our vehicle. And we use this endocannabinoid system to sensor array, manage, and balance all of our systems. So every system in your body would be subservient to the endocannabinoid system. And then the last thing is, this is, it's common to most life, right? So it's just everywhere. So we'll talk more about specifically about kind of what it does inside of us. But the big thing is it's common to most life. It has nothing to do with marijuana. And it really runs a lot of the processes that we have inside of us.
Wow. Sounds really foundational to just how we function overall. So I'm surprised this isn't talked about more. Um, well, I have a question for you. Can you please explain how the master regulatory system was discovered and what are main functions?
Yeah, so it was discovered in 1993, 1994. It was discovered by a group of Israeli researchers. They discovered the main, let's say, ligand in the system. So, the way that you kind of work when your body's trying to make changes is you'll have neuroreceptors, and then you'll have ligands that come along and kind of plug into those receptors, and you'll do work, right? So the endocannabinoid system works that way. So they discovered the main ligand in 1993. They'd already kind of discovered these guys. So in the 80s, they were beginning to discover the endocannabinoid receptors or master regulatory system receptors. But it wasn't until 93 that they discovered the main guy here, and he's called anandamide. And so in 1993, they discovered anandamide. They began to understand that this master regulatory system was pretty darn important. In about 2001, they discovered kind of let's say the CB2 side of the system. So they began to discover something called 2-arachnoglial, which is another kind of lock and key thing that is a part of the system. And by really the let's say, 2005, 2008, the system had been pretty well mapped out and, discovered, let's say. So it's not, new. It's been, in science for 20 years or so. But, the importance of it, is really interesting. So why the importance of it wasn't, immediately put in textbooks and kind of immediately put in major universities is interesting. And that is kind of a conspiratorial, let's say, question. But, I would say the reason for that is because it's so threatening. It's so threatening to the pharmaceutical system. It's threatening to the medical system. It's threatening to the food system. And so those businesses don't really want you to understand or know about this system because it empowers you to move past what they have to sell you. Okay. So, yeah.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Well, you piqued my interest there. I want to hear all about how this empowers us as individuals to avoid being stuck on pharmaceuticals. It feels like in America, and I'm sure throughout the world, that pharmaceuticals are just the first choice we have or the only choice often. So I'm really curious about exactly how this empowers us. So how does the MRS relate to common wellness goals? Like fun things like weight loss, looking good, and really overall feeling great. And a fun phrase that one of my clients uses is like, how does mastering your master regulatory system help us function on all four cylinders?
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit more in depth. So just as to weight loss, so weight loss is obviously a big thing with a lot of women and a lot of us right now. In fact, half of us are would be classified likely as obese, right? So it's a big social problem. The lack of weight gain. Now, if you talk to, and again, I'll get to the master regulatory system in a second, but I just want to talk about kind of behavior and the way we think. But if you talk to someone who's overweight, they'll likely going to tell you they've worked very, very hard to lose weight. They've tried, calorie restrictions. They've tried all kinds of different strategies. And, for whatever reason, they haven't been able to lose weight. So that's a tough thing. And then, we judge people, I feel like, in our society, and we kind of judge people who are overweight very harshly. Now, let me kind of tell you what happens in the endocannabinoid or in the master regulatory system, because this will help you understand really the power of this system. Okay. So if we think about eating is the most complicated and kind of stressful thing that we do to ourselves every day. But how we eat, again, as soon as we put food into our mouths, we have to begin to understand what we put in our mouths and how to break it down. And you have three categories of things. So you have kind of carbohydrates are a category, proteins are a category, and fats are a category. So as soon as you eat something, you have endocannabinoid receptors on your taste buds that will sense carbohydrate, protein, fat, and begin to cue your pancreas to release those enzymes. As you eat, and again, eating is also cued by the endocannabinoid system. So you can't really digest your food unless you have endocannabinoid CB1 receptors expressed in your stomach. But as you begin to eat, literally every single type of fat that you eat will build a separate endocannabinoid. There's 9 different endocannabinoids that are built just from omega-3 fats. So omega-3 fats build endocannabinoids, omega-6 fats build endocannabinoids, saturated fat and monounsaturated fat all build ligands for your master regulatory system. So again, just eating and the control that's exercised with eating, and then how you feel full. And how you feel full is directly an endocannabinoid thing. In fact, there's an endocannabinoid receptor that kind of cues fullness, and he's called GPR119. No one has ever really heard of him, but he's the guy that if I push him, I'm going to express everything that the semi-glutides express. Okay. So I'm going to express the GLP-1s and the GIPs and the peptide YYs and all that. So that's just eating. Okay. So eating, it's uber, if you think about, your car and kind of, you put oil in it, how that oil goes through the system. Again, it's a similar thing, with food. So it's kind of involves your whole machine. So it's a lot of regulatory. Now, if you look at things like emotion, okay, so again, well, I feel kind of sad today. Again, how is emotion controlled? Well, emotion is controlled through the endocannabinoid system, or through this master regulatory system, and it's controlled with dopamine and serotonin. So dopamine and serotonin are managed and controlled by this master regulatory system, and dopamine and serotonin are what give us our mood. Okay, so literally everything in us, the system is touching to balance it. I always say all the time, we work like a vehicle. I mean, this physical thing that my soul drives around every day works very much like a vehicle, and it's predictable. It's we make it all magical and woohoo, and oh my gosh, it's you, and you have all kinds of magic and woohoo. But no, again, you're very predictable. You work like a machine, right? And we just need to understand kind of how we manipulate the machine, what the machine's master regulatory system is, and how we impact that. And by being able to impact this master regulatory system, I can make any change in your body. So if you're sad, I can make you happy. If you're hungry, I can make you not hungry. If you're not hungry, I can make you hungry. Everything happens through this system.
So incredible. It sounds like it really impacts brain function, hormones. It's foundational for everything. Incredible information. I love your analogy of functioning like a car. And what I said earlier, functioning on all 4 cylinders, I know more about fitness than I do cars. Maybe you want to be functioning on 6 cylinders or something. But yeah, ultimately fueling our machine well. So good. Well, okay, so what role does the MRS play in regulating metabolism and appetite? Like how exactly?
Yeah, so let's kind of walk that through exactly what happens. And so as we eat dietary fats, again, they are building endocannabinoids in our intestinal lumen, okay? So, and this is sending feedback, and we'll get into fullness in a second, but as we eat, again, you're a big fat machine. We're all big fat machines. As much as we like to think of ourselves as I'm a vegetable machine, no, you really are designed to run on fat, not glucose. Okay. So glucose is something that we kind of need to start our fat process, and we need a little bit of glucose, but we don't need near as much as we eat now. And we really are a big fat machine. Okay. So as soon as we eat fats, and again, saturated fat can come from an animal, or it can come from an avocado. Monounsaturated fat mainly comes from nuts and seeds. So avocado as such are monounsaturated, as do most nuts. Omega-3 and omega-6 are fats you have to consume on a daily basis. You cannot reclaim omega-3 and omega-6 fats. You can reclaim saturated fat, and you can reclaim monounsaturated fat. You cannot reclaim O3 and O6. O3 and O6 program us as we eat them. Okay, but as we eat these dietary fats, we are building endocannabinoids, and those endocannabinoids are immediately sending signals to our hypothalamus hippocampus as to what we've eaten and if we're nutritionally satisfied. Okay, so if I gave you the perfect amounts of saturated fat, monounsaturated fat, omega-3 and omega-6, boom, and gave those to you, you would be sated. You would feel sated. But none of us know how to do that right now. So again, we're kind of playing a game with this system. But again, we're getting immediate feedback from what we eat. But in particular, monounsaturated fat has something in it called oleic acid. Okay. And oleic acid, as soon as it hits your intestinal lumen, will build an endocannabinoid called oleomide. Oleomide is our satiety molecule. It is the thing that tells us you are full. It is also the thing that hits this GPR 119 that releases all the semaglutide, let's say, type soup of stuff. So metabolically, the way that you know that you're full is a cueing by oleic acid or monounsaturated fat. And you can either do that orally, so you can, I'm taking a tablespoon of olive oil and I'm going to feel full, or you can, that your body will kind of do its own processes there. Now there is some stuff that gets in the way of that. So, in a perfect world, I could take a teaspoon of olive oil. I would feel full. I wouldn't need to eat for a while. Your microbiome can get kind of, and again, the microbiome is completely controlled by this process I'll talk about in a second, but your microbiome can get whacked out. And if it gets whacked out in a certain way, you won't build oleomide. You won't build the satiety molecule. You'll never know that you're full. Okay. So, but real quick, when we eat these dietary fats, as we're assessing whether we have enough or not, so do we have enough of these dietary fats to run us, to run our system? If we do, great. If we don't, what happens is we build a biome. So you literally allow yourself to build a microbiome based on nutritional sufficiency of dietary fats. And that's all controlled by this master regulatory system, which is cool.
Wow, fantastic. So we need to eat lots of the fat meats, nuts, seeds, avocados, olives, but not trans fats. Does that play into? Okay.
Yeah, and so trans fats are like, you know, canola, and you're going to hear a lot because Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is going to be, you know, having a lot to say about health, likely for at least the next couple of months, if not next couple of years. But he's going to be talking a lot about seed oils. Okay. When you hear the word seed oils, it doesn't mean all seed oils. So like olive oil is a seed oil. Olive oil is really good for you. It contains, you know, these endocannabinoids or master regulators. So, you know, some seed oils are okay, you know, and we use seed oils all the time, like black seed oil, cranberry seed oil, and chia seed oil and all that. So those are fine. But when you look at the stuff that we fry stuff in now, so the vegetable oil and the canola oils and those type oils, those oils are harmful. Those oils are detrimental. Those oils will hurt you. So.
Because of how they're processed, do you have anything else to add about the harmful effects of the seed oils?
Yeah. So again, those seed oils are going to be, well, let me kind of walk you through some things. So those seed oils are not really the types of fats that your body is used to seeing. And so what happens is they're inflammatory. So they'll cause inflammation in the body. And so they'll cause you to bloat. They'll cause you to swell. You know, they will, let's say, they'll throw gasoline on any kind of infection that you might have. So if you look at kind of human health right now and what's wrong with most of us, we're infected. We're infected with pathogens, bacterias, viruses, funguses, parasites. And as gross and weird and, you know, wacky as that sounds, that's what's wrong with most of us. So guess what feeds these guys? Well, sugar feeds these guys, but so do these certain types of vegetable oils. And so you're kind of, you know, the stuff that's causing inflammation, you're just giving it more food.
Yeah. So we want to fuel our bodies well. It's like there's bad stuff that we could be feeding too, which may be a little bit of another conversation. But okay, so back to the MRS. What are some, like, how can an imbalance in the MRS affect our daily lives and overall well-being? And really, this is a question I have kind of off the top of my head here is, exactly is it MRS or endocannabinoid deficiency?
Oh, okay. So good questions. So, and this is, by the way, this isn't tested yet in science, and it really should be tested. So it's tested like in research studies and stuff. So if I'm looking at a cohort of obese people or cohort of autistic people, then, you know, I'll test their endocannabinoid levels or their master regulatory system levels. But there's no test right now. So you couldn't go get a test. I couldn't go get a test right now. So I'm a adjunct at Arizona State this semester, and my project is working on a test. So there likely will be a test because we're working on that with some really cool, bright young minds, you know, which is fun. But anyway, in this system, so it can definitely get out of whack. And so let's look at some disease states. So a disease state like autism is characterized by lower circulating levels of endocannabinoids, which is interesting. And there's reasons for that because they're basically kind of broken at the enzyme that builds endocannabinoids from these fats as we eat them. And so autistic people have a really weird biome. They have a different biome than normal, let's say, people, because that biome, if you have a low endocannabinoid system tone, you're not building an immune system from endocannabinoids like you normally would. So autistic people have to build their immune system from their gut biome. Okay. And this is why they have such a different immune system than, they can walk through a COVID ward and never get sick. Their incidence of cancer is like 0, right? So they have a different immune system because of kind of the defects that they have, but it's interesting. But they all have lower circulating endocannabinoids. Someone who's obese has higher endocannabinoids. And it's really interesting if you kind of, I'm an engineer by training, I'm a mathematician and, electrical engineer by training. So I kind of look at things engineering wise, and that tells us something, right? So if this is your engineering system, it's trying to make changes and it's your engineering control system. Well, if it's too high, again, it means it's trying to make changes that it can't make. And so it's continuing to throw resources at something, but it can't make the changes. In obesity, I'd have to give you a PhD level explanation, which I won't do, but that happens in obesity for a variety of reasons. If you look at autism is a situation where they can't make enough stuff to be able to control, their body and control everything. And again, there's reasons why that happens, but we definitely want to monitor this system. And the fact that it's untested is just almost criminal right now. So I will fix that because it needs to be tested. Physician needs a tool to be able to evaluate you in this system. And right now there isn't one. You need a tool as a coach, as a health and wellness coach, to be able to understand where people are at in this system and some interpretation and all that. We don't have those tools right now, sadly. So.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for your research that you're doing to make a breakaway in this part of the industry. So what are some common signs that someone's MRS might be out of balance? You mentioned autism. Anything else?
Yeah, again, if you have a disease state, let's say, so anybody with a disease, anybody with a physical problem, is going to have, let's say, dysregulation in their endocannabinoid system. Okay. So if you have an infection, and let's just talk about how an infection works. So something has to beat your immune system. That takes a trick. That's really hard to do. And in order to beat your immune system, like a pathogen, a bug, he has to block things. He has to rewire circuits. He has to do all kinds of things. Well, what a lot of these guys do is they have to stick you in an immune response. Okay. So you have 2 different types of immune response. So one is a direct killer response. Another is an antibody response. So if I've seen you before, now I can really kill you, right? So what they like to do is stick you in a response. So if I can stick you in kind of a type 1 response in a microenvironment and it takes a type 2 response to kill me, then that's what I'm going to do. And that's exactly what they do. When they do that, they always have to involve the endocannabinoid system, the master regulatory system. So that it's usually immune, but it's also master regulatory system. That can be measured. Okay, so that can be measured. So I can measure you as to the amount of, let's say, hijack that's going on in you, and I can measure how bad that is by measuring things in your endocannabinoid system. So your endocannabinoid system is pretty dynamic. It actually will, the ligands in it, so these guys, not these guys, well, both these guys and these guys change over time. So these guys will cycle in circadian rhythm during the day. And these guys only express when you need them. So they'll express in certain organs at certain times if you need to be able to control that organ, but they'll kind of de-express if you don't. And you can force it all and mess with it all. But anyway, there's ways to measure all that and kind of get in the middle of all that and to tell if our first line testing, you're still going to always have blood tests, but in 10 years from now, an endocannabinoid test or a master regulatory test will be as ubiquitous as a blood test because you have to know what's going on in the system in order to help you.
Yeah, awesome. Great information. So what are some natural ways to support a healthy MRS?
Oh, okay. Well, again, everyone always thinks, oh, I'll support my endocannabinoid system or master regulatory system by marijuana. Again, you can do it that way, but that's not the way your dog does it. That's not the way your bird does it. That's not the way your lizard does it. That's not the way most life on the planet does it. So, we're kind of smart and we can use supplements, and that is somewhat of a useful supplement. But the way that you normally, as unsexy as it is, the way that you normally and naturally feed this system is through dietary fats. Okay. So, yeah, and those are controllable, right? So we can control the amount and ratios of dietary fats that we eat. And let me tell you how important this is, okay? And this is super important if you have allergies, if you have any kind of autoimmune disease, if you have anything that's, let's say, really reactive, okay? So any kind of situation that's reactive. If I feed you equal amounts of omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids, you're going to have a real dynamic and loose situation in your body and as to your immune system. So if you have an allergen happen, you're going to inflame a little, you're going to deal with that, then you're going to deflame. Okay. And if you have a pathogen attack you, so you're going to kind of have a mild inflammatory response, you're going to deal with it, and then you're going to kind of go away. But you're going to have a real robust and dynamic system. Right now, because of the amount of omega-6 that we eat over omega-3, and again, name me 6 sources of omega-3 fatty acids right now. I mean, no one can do it because they're just not in our diet. But, chia seeds are a really good one.
Seeds, walnuts, and flax seeds.
Good for you. Good for you. And not a lot of people know that, right? But we all eat it because of the amount of corn in our diet. So corn is omega-6. So you can just think of corn as nothing but omega-6. So corn chip, corn tortilla, corn is everywhere. So we eat a ton of omega-6 and we hardly eat any omega-3. It's about 1 to 40. Okay. So 1 to 40, and it should be about 1 to 1. What that does is it starts to crank up this spring of reactivity. Okay. And it cranks it up where we are right now. It cranks it up super tightly wound in the inflammatory direction. So anything that happens, if you kind of eat normally, let's say, here's a dust mite, whammy, you have this huge inflammatory reaction that's way out of bounds from the actual stimulus, right? And we're all kind of in that state right now. So we can all kind of assume that we're in that state. But, how do you fix this? You just eat more omega-3s. And again, your reactivity will turn down. So if you're like in your coaching, if you've got people who are super allergic to things or super reactive, let's say to certain foods and things, again, eating more omega-3 will crank that reactivity down where it's not so bad. And eating more omega-3 will do that too with, pathogen and immune response and all that. So, in what world, like medically, would I have to give you a monoclonal antibody which calms down your immune system in order for you to heal yourself? And it's only in this world of extreme inflammation and extreme unmanageable inflammation. So you can fix that yourself. Just eat more omega-3s. It's literally that simple. So this system is super configurable, but we all need more education. Me standing on the rooftops, screaming it like a crazy man is, I've been doing that for 6 years. It hasn't really gotten too far. I'll continue to do it, but we really need kind of a top down, we need a real rethinking of almost public education, on food and kind of this system and how food affects it and how food affects your health. But it's all endocannabinoid. So I couldn't teach you about this without teaching you about this system, the master regulatory system.
Yeah. Using food as medicine. So if you're struggling with that chronic inflammation, reach for those omega-3 fatty acids.
Yep.
Correct?
Yep. Yes, absolutely. Awesome. And if you're not, so you can do it with, and the nice thing about all this is God built us this great system. It's our food system. It's out there in nature. We just got to understand it better. So, chia seeds, as you said, chia seeds, walnuts, flax seeds, hemp seeds, all have more, let's say, omega-3 in them than omega-6. But you still have to do some math, right? Because those things still have some omega-6 in them. And they also have saturated monounsaturated fat in them. So there's let's say, if you press me and said, well, Chip, give me some numbers on what we should eat, the fats that we should eat. Okay. So I would say about 50% of our fat should be monounsaturated fat And that's a big change from now. So right now, way more than half the fat that we eat is saturated fat. Okay. But I would say that about 50, yeah, and keto, but this is still keto. So again, if you're eating, it doesn't have to come from an animal. But if 50% of your fat should be monounsaturated, 30% of your fat should be saturated. And again, that can come from animal fat. That can also come from avocados. There's saturated fat in plants. And then about 20% should be omega-3, omega-6. And those should be in a 1-to-1 to 1-to-4 balance. So 1 omega-3 to 1 omega-6, 1 omega-3 to 4 omega-6s. So they should be in that range, not 1-to-40 where we're at right now. And that is a super healthy profile that will build all the chemical mediators that you really need to manage and balance your body. So if you can balance those fats, again, that's kind of the top line thing that we really need to do to get this vehicle to run as good as it can. There's protein. Yeah, there's lots of sort of discussion under that, but we've got to get those fats right if we want to optimize our function.
Yeah. Salmon is another one, super high in those omega-3 plus the protein. So that's a powerhouse food there. You started talking about this earlier about how focusing on the MRS health can benefit pain management, but how about things like sleep and focus as well?
Yeah. So again, this is our master regulatory system. So what cues us to go to sleep, it turns out it's the master regulatory system. So it's the same satiety molecule is also kind of our sleep molecule. So oleomide will build in your system, and it kind of builds in your spine, but it will build in your system until you fall asleep. Build in your system until you fall asleep. Build in your system until you fall asleep. And this is why we can't, you physically can't go days or weeks without sleeping. It's just, you can't kind of fight this system. Now, the other thing that's really interesting about all this is about kind of regulation and how this works and everything is our relationship to the sun. So if you say, well, is there a system beyond the master regulatory system that kind of dictates what the master regulatory system does? Yes, absolutely. It's our relationship to the sun. Every hour, based on where the sun is, your body's doing something different. So, your body's, I think you work on your heart, between 11A and 1P, in kind of the circadian system. And again, you're using the endocannabinoid system to do that work. It's the engineering, method to do that work. But, if you eat lunch between 11 and 1, well, guess what you disrupt? Yeah. So we just, there's a lot more information here that we, kind of need to understand through this system, this master regulatory system, how our vehicles are working, and then be a lot kinder, let's say, to our vehicles and how we behave and what we're putting in them and all that.
Yeah. And diving a little deeper here, if you don't mind, we're talking to busy professional women who often they're in offices all day or indoors all day. So if they're not getting enough sunlight, is that going to hinder their MRS?
Yes, absolutely. So again, if you look at like the vitamin D and how tightly vitamin D is tied into your immune system and kind of how you regulate yourself, it's not, let's say vitamin D is not as important as the master regulatory system, but it's super important in how you're defending yourself. Vitamin D, if you work inside and you live north of Oklahoma and you're Caucasian, you will have to supplement with vitamin D. You just don't get enough vitamin D. The darker your skin is, the further south that line goes. And so, anybody really south of, let's say, northern Oklahoma needs to be supplementing with vitamin D. It doesn't really matter what your skin color is. But if you can get, if you look at longevity studies and those blue zone studies and, how do you live to be healthy and live a long life and all that, every single one of those studies has people out in the sunlight for 30 minutes, an hour, every single day. So it's super important to get in the sun. It's interesting in health when you research health and you kind of do what I do, you're kind of a deep diver and deep digger into stuff. your relationship or our relationship with the sun, for whatever reason, is very occulted in science. So it's something that, I'm not going to kind of let you see. And, you can find it sideways in research papers and all kinds of stuff. But for whatever reason, that's something that, whoever's designing studies and, paying the money for them doesn't want you to understand your relationship to the sun. And that just makes me curious. So it just says, well, this is interesting. Let's dive into this one. Because likely there's some smoke and fire there that, they don't want you to see for some reason. So anyway, yes, if you're inside, you need to, if you work inside and cannot get outside every day, then you absolutely need to be supplementing with vitamin D. I'll tell you something that's kind of cool. I don't think we're mammals. Okay. So I don't think this human form is not a mammal. It works kind of like a mammal, and mammals are useful to study us, but I can't make vitamin D north of Oklahoma. My dog can make vitamin D in Alaska. And that's enough of a fundamental difference to say, you're not a mammal. You have a special relationship with the sun that you need to be aware of. Otherwise, it will hurt you. It will be detrimental. So if you don't understand that relationship with the sun, you're going to be harmed by not having that knowledge.
Yeah. So like photosynthesis with plants.
We have, so you can run mitochondria. So we all get our energy from these things called mitochondria. Mitochondria all have this little hook on them to the master regulatory system. So again, your master regulatory system has to be able to control energy, and it does it by controlling mitochondria. But mitochondria build a fuel. So we all have a gasoline. It's called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And as adenosine triphosphate can be built from 3 different substrates. Okay, so it can be built from glucose, so carbohydrates and things like that. So sugar. But it can be built from glucose. It can be built from fat, and in particular, dietary fat, saturated fat. And then it can also be built from light. Okay, so we know, as you just mentioned, plants photosynthesize and they build ATP from light. Now, there's no question you don't photosynthesize, but you build ATP from light, not in quite the same way that a plant does. And in fact, there's a lot of light interactions inside of us that are a little too woo-hoo for, let's say, science right now, but it doesn't mean that they don't happen. And it doesn't mean that you don't signal with light, because you sure do. So that's a coming attraction in science. If there's some bright young minds out there that are interested in stuff, that's a good field. It's going to be a giant field in the future. So
very cool. How exciting. Well, can you please share any success stories or testimonials that can the listeners some hope from people who have benefited from focusing on their MRS health?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say we've got growing populations of people with different health conditions that have all benefited from better management of their master regulatory system. So in particular, we've got people who are trying to lose weight. And we have product there in TrueMedics. So we've got a product called Fast that's a very good product for weight loss. It's rivaling Ozempic, and it's way less than Ozempic. You don't have to pay $1,500 a month for our product. So we have a product like that. We've got another product called Calm. It's really interesting. This Calm product, normally I build products for something, they work for that thing. I'm getting feedback that I've kind of nailed it on my design, and we'll kind of stick it and keep it doing that thing. So weight loss would be one. We've got gut enhancing products, we've got deworm products, we've got all kinds of different products. But I built a product for seizures, and this is really interesting. So this product has some CBD in it, which does, directly impact the system, and some CBG in it, which also does. But I built this product for seizures, okay? And again, I can't claim that our products work for a disease state, so I've got to kind of talk around this stuff. So I built it for seizures. We got great testimonials, let's say, that it was working well as designed, so it was doing, what it was intended to do. But I also had some people begin to try it for other stuff. It's like, well, and it's kid safe, so all of our stuff is kid safe. They said, well, my child has a fever, and I tried some Calm, with the child, and the fever went away. And I'm like, okay, well, that's really, really, really interesting. Let's sort of evaluate this and begin to look at populations. But we get to get numerous reports of that. And so now that is a product that we or suggest to replace Tylenol or, NSAID type products, right? That are bad for your liver and hurt, your kidneys and
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff. So, and this is a safe, food based, product. So, and then, we can get into detail about, we've got, we deal with cancers all the time. We deal with autistic people all the time. We deal with very severe, cyclic vomiting syndrome and just, all kinds of things that we provide solutions for, but they're endocannabinoid solutions. So all I'm doing is looking at what's messed up in your endocannabinoid system, seeing how we can re-regulate that thing, and then, having effectors to basically do that. And that works extremely well as a health strategy. So, and it's all safe. It's all just food, which is cool. So, yeah.
Spices. I made a joke one time that it's like a medicinal taco seasoning.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So it's kind of, again, the stuff in taco seasoning is pretty medicinal, which is funny.
Awesome. So you are the brain and like the scientist behind all of your products, correct? You build all of them?
Yeah. So it's, we, design the product now, and, I hold patents. So I have that's what that is behind me. So it's an issued patent on what we're doing, but we design all our formulations now, and then we make them all now. Now, as we get bigger and, we're kind of talking to companies about this, we will likely move that manufacturing because we can get more certifications. So it's not like we're doing it wrong or bad now, we're doing it really good. But if we move to a different manufacturer, we could get certifications like NSF, which is it costs a lot of money to get NSF certified or USP certified. But if we can have our product manufactured there, then we get those certifications. So we're looking at doing that just to kind of really up our game with the quality of our products and everything. But they're good right now. And I personally make them all right now. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, closing out, the last question I have for you is, how has understanding the MRS changed your overall approach to health and wellness in a practical sense?
God, complete. So I can't even tell you the state that I was in, let's say 8 years ago. In fact, so this is kind of a good story to answer your question, but I was a teetotaler. When I was 20 years old, I was doing a lot of cocaine. I was drinking a lot. I was smoking a lot of marijuana. I was doing a lot, and marijuana is not that bad, but the cocaine was bad. But I was doing a lot of things that I knew I couldn't continue to do and have a life, complete college, have a family, all that kind of stuff. So I just quit cold turkey, and was completely sober for almost 30 years. Okay. Cindy and I both have, my wife, Cindy, she is a 2-level spinal fusion. So she's in a lot of pain, and we both were teetotalers. We didn't drink, we didn't smoke, we didn't do anything. But she was in a lot of pain with her neck, and I have a back pain, lower back pain. I was in a lot of pain with my back. We decided to try cannabis for our pain. And this is what started our whole journey. So we drove to Colorado, and this was 2013. We drove to Colorado, we tried marijuana, and it worked for both of us for our pain. That is when I started really studying the system. And then I began to understand that, as I developed patents and kind of developed formulations, that I could use this to do anything. So I haven't been to the doctor in 8 years. I've had all kinds of, situations kind of happen, but we are able to address those situations. And same with Cindy, we're able to address those situations for the most part with just the stuff that we do, just the food products, let's say, that we make that impact the master regulatory system. So there's not much beyond, let's say, the grasp of formulating, into this system. You can almost do anything to this machine, because it's configurable, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Wow. Sounds like it was the gateway into natural medicine for you, which is really exciting.
Yeah, it really was. And the fear was, oh my gosh, if we, try cannabis, then we'll become, crazed drug addicts and all that, which obviously didn't happen. I'm not crazed.
Well, thank you so much for the work that you do and empowering the masses to be able to support our MRS and endocannabinoid system through natural whole food sources. That's incredible work. So thank you so much for letting me ask a million questions. And I have so many more for you. So
we're going to do this. So we're going to do a episode 2 and an episode 3, right? Yes. Where we get into even more detail. Yep. And I just want to thank you for what you do. You know, it's, we all need to, let's say, take this knowledge and deliver it to people, you know, in some way. And so I just appreciate, you know, the fact that you found a lane where you can take this knowledge and deliver it and really help so many people. And so good for you for doing this. And I, you know, God loves you for it. So let's just put it that way.
Well, excited to serve the people. And I do want to offer your community, going along with reducing inflammation in the body. I have some seasonal recipes. Fall is approaching. So if you want some fall recipes to help spice up your regular meals, message on Instagram at Scolds by Bri, and I will get your community some free recipes and some support there. So
very cool.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we'll leave it here and we'll be back next week, I think, with episode 2 about the same time.
Yes, episode 2. We'll see you here next Wednesday.
All right. See you guys.
The rest of your day. See ya.
Okay. Bye.